Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Raised by Wolves, Season 2, Episode 5 and Episode 6. Now, you may be wondering, Hax, why skip last week and combine the two episodes into their own video? Didn't each have enough to justify a standalone breakdown? In short, yes they did. But, just like I promised, chaos. So Episode 5 has a few major events that really shape the story going forward. The first is Sue and Paul. Paul is saved by Sue after she gets a vision of an indigenous leech after praying to Soul for help that naturally takes some empirical evidence that this, entity is real to Sue. She doesn't know if it's Soul or if it's another alien sending this transmission, but like we've talked about before, it's probably the same thing, and it's not really worth noting a kind of difference at all. Whatever it is, saved Paul, and Sue immediately recognized that Marcus and the others that described that unbelievable occurrence had some ground to stand on. Seeing is clearly believing, and it makes me wonder why this entity isn't just showing everybody their own respective revelations. I suspect that it's because of some grander purpose, and this whole plot is going to be a very precisely calculated thing, but of course, only time will tell. Next, we come to Holly, Marcus, and the church. Now, we first see some of the drama between Marcus and the others as they begin losing their faith in him, wondering if he is the prophet they believed. Then we see Holly challenged to give up the Tooth of Romulus, which she denies at first, but when Marcus creepily takes it from her, she agrees that the king should have the king's relic. They spot another temple in the sand, and thankfully this time are able to enter. It's not clear if something broke in or out to cause this damage, but based on what we learn from this temple and the cave halfway down, it looks like the snakes and the Mithraic maybe really literally weren't on the same side in this past cycle. I wonder if these temples weren't built over top of these holes to try to prevent them from escaping or prevent them from getting in. After all, Season 1 tells us outright that the snakes are extinct. Of course, this is a unreliable narrator at the time because, again, just a limited scope of information. But it's outright giving us that information that they are extinct and not simply, not there. And that is when we get the new life from Mother. And I think it would not make sense to take away the significance of that by having just a whole, nest of snakes elsewhere. Assuming that that information is correct, and it's the only creature that we know to be extinct on this planet, I have to wonder why. When it's clearly able to exist in the tropical zone, why they would simply stay in this barren land and die. Like Season 1, it still feels like these holes are, a big mystery that we need to learn about, and the temples as well. Right now, my guess is that snake versus Mithraic was a real thing, and assuming the default nature of the snake is herbivore, and that also wasn't a manipulation by the voice to convince Mother and the audience that the snake wasn't a threat, I wonder if in this past cycle, it was ultimately the voice who commanded the snakes to target the Mithraic on this planet. It's like your job is done. It's time for you to simply die and release the snakes or whatever have you. But we are officially down a whole rabbit hole with a dozen theory-crafted variables building to this point. So I'm jumping around a bit, but these two episodes also gave us the name of how the android was recreated with Botanitech. Botanitech, yeah, I said that right. Oh my god. Father notes that it could grow cities, it could grow ships or giant androids, which makes me think that we will see a giant android at some point, and the ship that brought humanity to Earth was probably that same tech. The idea of growing cities as well would be amazing, and the reason I even brought this up is because these temples might have been constructed with that material, seeing as it's still a mystery material that we don't know anything about, clearly related to the Mithraic as well. But also, while we are on the subject of entire cities, why would they just create temples? Assuming that they did, why would this be the only thing that remained after so many years? If cities could be built, where are they? Are they underground? Are they just long gone? And if so, if they are long gone, why have these temples remained when everything else has not? Marcus goes down the hole, which I'm sure that we all assumed would lead to the middle of the planet, but instead gets stopped at the bones of a dead snake. He breaks through the wall of bones, which I think we can assume were placed to prevent the snake's entry. I'm not really sure. The tooth dissolving into pixie dust and floating up to the old person, here, was also an interesting development. I think it maybe just shows that former Linck, that cycle of humanity existing. The fact that it turns into one of those beasts, I think, is way more interesting than anything else. How, right? It's been described as this devolution of humanity. Why would the chemical compound of this old relic lock onto them and just rapidly turn them into a beast? Maybe that's just what they would always turn into. Maybe just humanity developed as these anthropomorphic beings, and this wasn't so much as a devolution of the creature or species itself. It was just, transformers. Okay, I want to take back everything I just said. I'm not too sure. It could also be a virus. In order to send humanity back to Earth, the voice turned all of these people into beasts. This would, man, I'm really not sure. This is the one that I might be the most unsure about because it feels like this interaction could mean so many different things. It feels like this dude survived the worst only to be brought back and then immediately killed or turned into the thing that he feared the most. Of course, we also see that he was a follower of Sol, further building the narrative that they too came from Earth and their civilization ended with the ship that brought humanity and the scriptures back to Earth for the cycle to continue. As Marcus is being brought back, we see the congregation torn apart by a haunting android. It's not clear why she snapped and just started committing heinous murder, but I think we can all assume that it was Sol manipulating their programming, which... this was so freaky. I mean, this was like horror, right? Imagine being a little kid and seeing this for the first time. This is nightmare fuel. If this was Sol, I am very curious as to why it didn't want the entire church around. Why dwindle your numbers at all? I guess it all relates to this idea of a test. This idea of faith and going against the odds being something that, you can root behind. Whenever you're down, you can always look ahead and be like, hey, the scriptures say I'm going to be down and I'm going to have to go this, incredible journey, this impossible test. I'm going to have to do that. And there will always be a reward at the end. With the majority of the congregation now, once again, no longer a part of the congregation, the arc has moved a little bit quicker than I thought we would see. I thought there'd be more interpersonal drama there. And Marcus is, once again, now with the main group, which feels like a good step in the right direction for the drama of the overall show. Of course, it is very short-lived, as both mother and father cannot keep their promise to Lucius, and Sue helps him escape with Paul to go plant the seed that she stole from the tarantula. The next major storyline we have during these two episodes would be Father and Grandmama. Father has some alone time with his new creation, gets called by Mother, who just knows, who is just peering into his soul that he is getting ready to cheat on her. I don't know how she knows, but she knows. And maybe that's a stereotype they always know. Partners always know. Together, they watch the hologram that was left by Holly and then disregard it because to them it isn't logical, and Father goes off to find Holly. He takes Lucius, makes the deal, captures Marcus, breaks the deal, and Lucius ends up living as a free man all on his own. Campion has been playing a supportive role during these episodes, helping Sue with the leeches and then campaigning amongst the people to show that he will make a good leader. Like I said before, the only thing that will stop him from leading are the people not knowing that he would be a good moral leader outside of the influence of Mother. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see if that works or if, that plot ever develops. Honestly, I don't think I can see Campion as a leader right now. I don't think I can see any child as a leader right now. It'd feel super religious on either side of it, right? So maybe this is a thing where in 10 years we come back to the plot and Campion can actually lead as that actor. Campion stumbles across the android that he names Grandmother, which is a very fitting name, and I mean, it's literally a perfect name for us to track the generations of robots here. I love it. And Mother comes flying in out of nowhere to ruin the fun as always. But honestly, I agree. They are far too trusting with this wild, growing robot. I even said this in my last video. I can't believe Father is doing any of these things. But loneliness, right? I think people underestimate loneliness, even in androids. I mean, we can't imagine in androids, but I can imagine it myself. I think People do crazy shit when they're lonely. Everybody does. We discovered the model of mother and grandmother are very similar. Further proof of this cyclical theory, with the big difference being that mother has weapons while grandmother has something else entirely that is meant to be vague and ominous. Part of me still thinks that it is a weapon of some kind because, say an alien creature came with dark photon plasma gravity cannons, would we even know to be afraid of them? Like if just a amoebus blob showed up floating in our atmosphere, the reality is that it's a nuclear bomb, but from our perspective, it's just like a tiny cluster of cells. Would we actually know to be afraid of it as if it was a nuclear bomb? I don't think so. Part of me thinks that she is that weapon, and part of me thinks that she is a builder of some kind. I think it would make sense with the analogies that we've gotten already. Or maybe his father has described himself a farmer. Now that we have this link between grandmother and father, with her believing father was her former partner, I wonder if she isn't a farmer as well, and maybe should be terraforming the land. Perhaps that is what is happening on Earth right now, preparing the world for humanity version Z, right? Holly at one point interacts with grandmother, and then later we learn from Sue that the baby has accelerated growth. I think this could highlight her purpose, but it's not really directly correlated in the show. This was just the only strange thing that I saw, her interact with that could have affected the baby. Of course, when it's born, we have the wild scene that just felt biblical, like single mom tracking across the wilderness, acid waters crashing on a stone pathway as she delivers her own child. Like, something about this was so powerful. But the biggest thing to actually talk about is the Go-Go Baby Abductor 3000 that just placed Holly's child into a protective sack and then jumped back into the water. Of all of the unexpected things, this was the most unexpected. I have zero clue what to think about this. She does recant her former position and appears to want the child now that it exists in the real world, screaming mine at the mer person. Also, the mer people have a striking resemblance to the devolved versions of humanity that was described to us last season, and then in this episode as well, we see them come back again. This could be like different evolutions of humanity, right? When they come back and Soul decides that they're no longer needed. Maybe it's a virus that turns them into dogs, or maybe it's a virus that turns them into mer people, or something like that, right? I think it's possible that these are just simply like the humans again, in a very mutated form, and that is why it's ultimately attracted to the child. And I guess we just need to call Chris Hansen. Mother seeks the help of Lucius, who does not know where Paul, Marcus, or Sue have gone, but provides a timely warning about the seed that they're trying to grow. They try to open it by force, and it creates some kind of reaction with the snake, as if the snake was intimately connected to this object, or the religion, or the voice itself was maybe sending out some kind of painful signal because the box was being zapped. It wasn't being opened as it was supposed to be opened, and it was expressing that please don't please don't break this one thing. I just need this one thing to work. Please do not break it by brute forcing it open. And maybe the snake was interpreting that in some kind of way. Whatever it was, it doesn't make me trust the snake anymore. I fully believe that this thing is going to flip a switch at some point and just start eating people or squishing them. The episode ends with Sue giving her life for Soul and becoming the fabled tree. Marcus eats from it, and Paul searches for his mom, only to see his father's reaction once he realizes what has happened. Once again, Soul tests Marcus and Paul like the good faith boys that they are, and they will chalk it up to religion requiring sacrifice and faith and yada yada yada. The biggest takeaway for me is that it requires humans to restart it. Whatever is going on, it needs humanity. Like, it needed Sue to sing this song, and it needed a host in order to embed the seed in for the tree to grow and take Sue's life. It's starting to feel very parasitic, and if you look across everything that it's ever done, it is very parasitic. This thing relies on the cycle to remain in some kind of power or maintain its own life force. And maybe it's a whole civilization. It would be a pretty big twist to learn that maybe another species exists, or another version of humanity is in this same exact loop. Thank you, Morty. And maybe they are on Earth right now. It would make this entire story take thousands of years per cycle, but I think that's already happening. Imagine what you would need to do to stop that, assuming that the voice is coming from Kepler-22b and is actually stoppable within the scope of this story. I guess we still don't know, but right now, I think the voice needs humanity, and it's all about figuring out why, as well as why it is taking such an indirect route to obtain its goals. It can literally broadcast things into people and android minds, just brainwash everybody and call it a day, right? Like, maybe it's weak. Maybe it can only do it so often. Maybe that's what it needs. It needs some kind of rejuvenation. And the reason that the religion and soul's voice is so wishy-washy at times is because it's not at its full capacity. But I'm not too sure. Again, way down the rabbit hole there. The very, 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 very last thing that I want to discuss with these two episodes will be this guy right here. He was in trouble with Mother for knowing about the plot to use Paul as a holy hand grenade. We see him totally convinced that he is going back to Earth. Marcus says that it was the trust that did this, that did a number on him, but we know, because we watched it, it was actually Mother who is responsible for this behavior adjustment. She is reprogramming humans, like she would reprogram Father if he disagreed with her, and actively telling Campion and how to control the masses. This feels like a bad direction for Mother, actively saying, just like the trust did for Paul, that this single life does not matter in the grand scheme of things. Which, probably not good. Probably not good, guys. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Please let me know if I left anything out of these two episodes. Special thank you to everyone on Patreon, including this month's highest tier donor, Michael Linck. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.